The millionaire didn't look nervous when she made the offer. She looked desperate. "I need a boyfriend," she said, sliding a single sheet of paper across the polished conference table as if it were a routine contract amendment. "Just for one weekend. Meet my parents." Jake Carter stared at her the way a man stares at something that is almost certainly a trap. He was a single father with a leaking roof, overdue bills, and a 7-year-old daughter who needed an asthma inhaler he'd been putting on the credit card for 3 months straight. Pretending to be a millionaire's boyfriend was not, in any version of his imagination, part of his life plan. "How much?" he asked carefully. $10,000. Jake leaned back in the chair, which probably cost more than his truck, crossed his arms, and let out a slow breath through his nose. "Fine," he said. Then he looked her directly in the eye and added the one thing she clearly didn't expect. "But I'm not sleeping on the sofa." She laughed. A real laugh, brief and surprised, like something that escaped before she could stop it. Neither of them knew that by Monday morning, nothing about the weekend would feel like pretend. The town of Claremont, Virginia, was the kind of place where everybody knew what everybody drove. Jake Carter drove a 2009 Ford pickup with a cracked side mirror and a tailgate that only closed if you lifted it at a specific angle while pressing your hip into the left corner. His daughter, Lily, age 7, had named the truck Gerald. Jake had been running his one-man repair operation out of a converted barn at the edge of town for 4 years. He could fix anything with an engine, a circuit board, or a carburetor that had seen better decades. He was, by any reasonable measurement, good at what he did. He was not good at charging people enough for what he did, which was the source of most of his financial problems and all of his mother's frustration with him. The job that brought him to Richmond on that particular Thursday afternoon was a specialty delivery. A restored 1968 Pontiac GTO that a client named Douglas Harrington had commissioned and paid for in full. Jake had spent 11 weeks on it. It was the most beautiful car he had ever touched, and handing it over felt the way he imagined it felt to give a child up for adoption. Right in theory, hollow in practice. The Harrington building was all glass and steel, and a front desk staffed by a young man in a suit that probably cost more than Jake's monthly mortgage. Jake signed a delivery form, handed over the keys, and was prepared to walk back to the parking garage and drive the 3 hours home in Gerald when he heard someone say his name. Not his name, exactly. Just his last name. Carter. He turned. She was standing by the elevators in a charcoal blazer and white dress shirt, dark hair pulled back, holding a phone in one hand and watching him the way a person watches something they've already decided to approach. She was younger than he expected, late 20s, maybe 30. Sharp eyes. Composed in the specific way that people get when composure has become a professional skill. "Emma Lawson," she said. It was not an introduction. It was an identification. "Jake Carter," he said, which was equally obvious. "I know." She tilted her head slightly. "Douglas told me about you. He says you're the only person in the state who could have brought that car back to what it was." Jake said nothing. He waited. Emma Lawson was the CEO of Lawson Digital Solutions, a software and infrastructure company that had tripled its valuation in 3 years and was currently in discussions for a major acquisition that would push it into the top tier of its industry. Jake knew none of this at the time. He knew only that she was watching him with the kind of focused attention that made him feel like he was being evaluated for something that hadn't been explained yet. "I have an unusual request," she said. Most unusual requests start with, "I know this is strange, but," Jake said. The corner of her mouth moved. "I know this is strange. Then go ahead." She didn't do it in the lobby. She walked him to a small conference room off the main hall, closed the door, and set a single document on the table between them. It was 4 paragraphs long, and written in the clipped, precise language of someone who had drafted it themselves and was not embarrassed by the fact that they'd reduced a human relationship to a bullet-pointed agreement. The proposal was this. Her parents, Martin and Carol Lawson, were visiting their family estate on Lake Coventry the following weekend. They had been, in Emma's words, aggressively persistent about wanting to see her settled. There had been 2 arranged introductions in the past year, both of which Emma had terminated before the second meeting. Her mother had recently escalated to leaving voicemails about a family friend's son who had, as Carol put it, real warmth. Emma did not want real warmth from a man her mother had selected. She wanted a controlled weekend with a credible stand-in who would satisfy her parents' basic expectations, create enough of an impression to buy her 6 months of peace, and then quietly exit the arrangement with no complications. She had, apparently, been watching Jake deliver the Pontiac and made a decision. "Why me?" Jake asked. "Because you're not from my world," she said, without apology. "My parents will sense immediately if I bring someone from my industry. Everyone knows everyone. A mechanic from Claremont with no agenda and no connections, that's actually harder to find than it sounds." Jake looked at the document for a long moment. He thought about the inhaler, about the credit card balance, about the quote he'd gotten last month for the roof, which had caused him to sit at the kitchen table for an hour after Lily went to bed, running numbers that refused to cooperate. $10,000, he said. "Correct. For 2 days, Friday afternoon through Sunday evening." Jake stood up and pushed his chair back. "Fine." He picked up the document. "But I'm not sleeping on the sofa." Emma blinked. "There are 4 guest rooms." "Good." He folded the document and put it in his jacket pocket. "I'll need the details by Wednesday. I have to make arrangements for my daughter." It was the first time he'd said it. He watched her absorb it. "You have a daughter," she said. 7 years old. Her name is Lily." He looked at Emma steadily. "Is that a problem?" "No," Emma said, after a pause that lasted exactly long enough to be honest. "It isn't." They met again on Wednesday evening at a restaurant in Richmond, Emma's Choice, which Jake suspected cost approximately the same per entree as a week of Lily's school lunches. He came in his cleanest clothes, which Emma politely declined to evaluate out loud. The purpose of the dinner was preparation. Emma had a list. She went through it methodically. Her parents' expectations, her father's conversational tendencies, her mother's most likely lines of interrogation, what to say if asked about their first meeting, how long they had supposedly been together, why Emma had not mentioned him sooner. Jake listened. He asked good questions. Emma noted this. "How did we meet?" he asked. "I've been thinking about that." "Douglas Harrington, I can say I was at his office when you delivered the car. My father knows Douglas. It's verifiable, it's simple, and it gives us a natural story. How long have we been together? 3 months. Long enough to be meaningful. Short enough that they can't demand to know why they haven't heard about you." Jake nodded. He was halfway through writing something on the back of a napkin. Emma frowned. "What are you doing?" "Making notes." He turned the napkin so she could see. He had written, "Dad, chess, hunting, Douglas connection. Mom, traditional. Cooking angle, first meeting story. Harrington delivery. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right," he said. Emma stared at the napkin for a moment. "You take this seriously. You're paying me $10,000, Jake said. "I take everything I'm paid for seriously." They spent an hour covering background. At some point, Jake looked at his watch, not subtly. Emma noticed. "Do you have somewhere to be?" "School pickup, 45 minutes. He set down his fork. "Lily's aftercare ends at 6. Can someone else?" "No," Jake said simply. Not defensively, just as a fact. Emma absorbed this. She signaled for the check. They walked out to the parking lot together. Jake's truck was parked next to Emma's black company car, and the contrast was, if nothing else, efficient storytelling. He was unlocking the door when Emma said, almost despite herself, "What's her name?" "Your daughter, Lily." He looked back at her. "She'll be with her grandmother this weekend.